My dear brothers and sisters, every one of us, without exception, is being tested. Some are tested with hardship, others with ease. Some with loss, others with delay. Some with loneliness, others with unanswered du'as. And sometimes the test is so long that you begin to wonder, is Allah still listening to me? Let me tell you something important today. Allah has never ignored you. Allah has never forgotten you. And your pain has never gone unseen. But here is the question we rarely ask. How does Allah signal that a test is coming to an end? Because Allah does not always remove the test suddenly. Sometimes He changes you before He changes the situation. 1. The first sign. Your heart changes before your situation does. One of the clearest signs that Allah is easing a test is this. The pain remains, but it no longer controls you. You still remember, you still feel, but it no longer breaks you the way it used to. Why? Because Allah is strengthening your heart quietly. Earlier, the same problem made you cry for nights. Now you say, Allah is sufficient for me. That calm, that acceptance, that strength, that is not you. That is Allah preparing the exit. 2, the second sign, your dua changes at the beginning of a test. Our du'as are desperate. Ya Allah, remove this pain. Ya Allah, change them. Ya Allah, give me what I lost. But near the end of a test, something beautiful happens. Your dua becomes, Ya Allah, keep me close to you. Ya Allah, don't let this take me away from you. Ya Allah, whatever you choose, I trust you. When your dua moves from results to reliance, that is Allah telling you, you have learned the lesson. 3, the third sign, doors you never knocked begin to open, subhanallah. When Allah is about to end a test, He opens doors you didn't even ask for. A new opportunity appears. A new peace enters your heart. A new understanding changes your direction. A new person supports you without reason. You sit there thinking, I didn't even ask for this. Exactly. Because Allah is showing you, I was planning something greater while you were only asking for relief. 4, the fourth sign, you stop chasing and things start coming to you earlier. You are running after answers, running after people, running after closure, running after validation. But near the end of the test, you stop chasing and suddenly peace finds you. Clarity finds you, strength finds you, because Allah never meant for you to run endlessly. He meant for you to arrive. 5, the fifth sign, you forgive without being asked. This one is powerful. Not because the other person apologized, not because they changed, but because you are tired of carrying pain. When you forgive for the sake of Allah, when you release what hurt you, that is a sign the test has purified you. And Allah does not keep a servant in pain after purification. 6, remember the stories Allah gave us. Think of Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him, years in a well, years in prison, years of silence. But do you know when the test truly ended? Not when he left the prison, but when his heart held no bitterness. Only then did Allah raise him. Elevation comes after inner peace. 7, why some tests feel like they're never ending. Sometimes Allah delays the end of a test because you are becoming closer to Him. Your heart is softening. Your rank is being raised. Your sins are being erased. If the test brought you closer to Allah, then wallahi, it was never punishment. It was preparation. 8, a message for the tired heart. If you are tired today, if you are exhausted emotionally, if you are silently crying at night, let this calm your heart. Allah does not test a heart He plans to abandon. And let this give you hope. No test lasts forever, but the reward for patience does. 9, the final sign, you trust Allah even without answers. When you stop demanding explanations, when you stop asking why me, when you say Allah knows and that is enough. That is not weakness. That is faith at its strongest. And when faith reaches that level, relief is already on its way. Conclusion, my dear brothers and sisters, if your heart is stronger, if your faith is deeper, if your reliance is purer, then rejoice. Because even if the test is still present today, its end has already been written. Trust Allah, hold on a little longer. And remember, what broke you was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to deliver you. Inner change comes before relief. Allah often ends a test by strengthening your heart first. when pain no longer controls you and your faith becomes calm, it's a sign the lesson is complete. Allah often ends a test in a way that surprises us, because the relief does not always arrive in the form we are waiting for. Many people expect the trial to end when the problem disappears, when the door finally opens, or when the pain is completely removed. But very often, Allah begins by changing the heart long before He changes the situation. This is one of the greatest signs that a test is coming to an end, yet it is also the most misunderstood. At the beginning of hardship, the heart feels heavy, restless, and overwhelmed. Every thought returns to the same pain, the same worry, the same unanswered question. Sleep becomes difficult, patience feels forced, and faith is tested at its weakest point. During this phase, a person may still pray, but the heart is restless, asking again and again, "Ya Allah, when will this end?" As time passes, something subtle begins to happen. The problem may still exist, the delay may still hurt, and the uncertainty may still be present, yet the heart no longer reacts in the same way. The tears reduce, not because the pain was small, but because Allah has placed strength where there was once only fear. The mind becomes calmer, the chest feels lighter, and the heart begins to accept what once felt unbearable. A person starts saying, "Allah knows what I do not know," and this sentence no longer feels forced. It feels real. This is not emotional numbness, and it is not giving up. It is Allah training the heart to stand steady. When Allah strengthens the heart, the trial loses its power. The hardship no longer defines your day, controls your mood, or steals your connection with Allah. You still remember what hurts you, but it no longer breaks you. You still feel sadness, but it no longer pulls you away from prayer. You still want relief, but you are no longer desperate in a way that shakes your faith. This change is not something a person can create on their own. It is a gift from Allah. It is Allah saying, "You are no longer the same person who entered this test." Many people think relief only comes when Allah changes the situation, but sometimes Allah ends the test by changing who you are inside it. You begin to carry the burden with dignity instead of panic. You begin to walk through difficulty with trust instead of fear. The heart starts finding peace in remembrance, not because life is perfect, but because Allah has become enough. When that happens, the test has already lost its purpose. The lesson has been learned, the soul has been refined, and the heart has matured. This inner change is also a sign of closeness to Allah. Earlier, the test may have pushed you toward complaint, frustration, or questioning. Now, it pushes you toward patience, reflection, and reliance. You speak to Allah more gently. You trust Him more deeply. You realize that even if the outcome is not what you imagined, Allah's wisdom is always better than your expectations. This is not weakness. This is faith reaching a higher level. It is the heart understanding that Allah does not owe us explanations, yet He never withholds mercy. When Allah places peace in the heart before removing the hardship, it is a mercy in itself. Because if the situation were removed without inner growth, the same weakness would return in the next test. Allah does not want to keep repeating lessons. He wants to elevate His servant. That is why He strengthens the heart first. That strength stays with you even after the test ends. It becomes part of who you are. It protects you in future hardships. It reminds you that you survived something you once thought would destroy you. If you feel today that your heart is calmer, your reactions are softer, and your trust is deeper than before, do not underestimate that change. Even if the problem still exists, this inner stability is a powerful sign that Allah is preparing relief. The test may not be over yet, but it is no longer controlling you. And when a test no longer controls the heart, its end is already near. Allah never strengthens a heart without planning ease for it. He never teaches patience without intending reward, and He never leaves a believer in hardship once the lesson has been completed. Dua shifts from results to trust near the end of a test. Your duas change from begging for answers to fully relying on Allah's wisdom. This shift shows spiritual growth and readiness for ease. One of the clearest signs that a test is nearing its end is the way a person's dua begins to change. At the beginning of hardship, dua is often filled with urgency and desperation. The heart is heavy, the pain feels unbearable, and the only thing the person can think to ask is for the problem to be removed immediately. The words repeat themselves. Ya Allah, take this away from me. Ya Allah, change the situation. Ya Allah, give me relief now. There is nothing wrong with these du'as. Allah loves to hear His servants call upon Him, especially in moments of weakness. But these early du'as reflect a heart that is still learning to trust, still trying to understand why it has been placed in difficulty. As time passes and the test continues, something begins to shift within the heart. The person may still ask for relief, but the tone of the du'a becomes calmer. The desperation softens, and the words begin to reflect acceptance rather than panic. Instead of only asking for the pain to end, the heart starts asking for strength, guidance, and closeness to Allah. The dua slowly transforms from change this situation to Ya Allah, help me remain patient, and from why is this happening to me to Ya Allah, I know you are wiser than me. This change does not happen overnight. It is the result of a heart that has spent time struggling, crying, and turning back to Allah again and again. When a person's dua shifts from demanding outcomes to trusting Allah's wisdom, it is a powerful sign of spiritual growth. At this stage, the heart understands that Allah's plans are not limited to what we can see. The person begins to realize that sometimes the greatest gift is not the removal of hardship, but the ability to remain connected to Allah during it. The dua becomes less about control and more about surrender. Instead of asking Allah to fit His decree into personal desires, the heart starts asking to be shaped by Allah's decree. This is not giving up on hope, it is placing hope in the right place. There comes a point when the heart no longer insists on a specific outcome. A person may say, Ya Allah, grant me what is best, even if I do not understand it. These words come from a heart that has been softened by trials. The believer begins to trust that Allah's delays are not rejections, and that unanswered du'as are often being stored, redirected, or answered in ways far greater than expected. At this stage, the heart finds peace in knowing that Allah hears every whisper, every tear, and every silent plea, even when the answer has not yet appeared. This shift in dua also changes how a person views time. Earlier, waiting felt painful and frustrating. Every delay felt like neglect. Now, waiting becomes an act of worship. The person understands that patience itself is rewarded, that reliance itself draws the believer closer to Allah, and that every moment of trust is being recorded. The heart learns that Allah is never late. He answers at the perfect time, in the perfect way, for the perfect reason. This understanding does not remove the difficulty, but it removes the bitterness from waiting. When dua becomes an expression of trust rather than urgency, the heart begins to feel lighter. There is less anxiety, less overthinking, and less fear about the future. The believer starts to live with the belief that whatever Allah chooses will be better than whatever the heart could have chosen on its own. This is a sign that the test has already served its purpose. The heart has learned reliance, humility, and sincerity. The believer has moved from asking Allah to change life to asking Allah to change the heart. This transformation in dua is also a sign that the relationship with Allah has deepened. The test may have started as a painful experience, but it becomes a means of closeness. The believer speaks to Allah more often, more honestly, and more gently. There is less formality and more sincerity. Dua becomes a conversation rather than a demand. In this closeness, the heart begins to feel safe even in uncertainty. When a person reaches the point where they trust Allah even without clear answers, relief is already on its way. Sometimes the situation changes soon after, and sometimes the change comes in a way the person never expected. But the most important relief has already arrived, the relief of the heart. Allah does not allow a heart to reach this level of trust without planning ease for it. When the dua changes, it is often because Allah is about to change what comes next. Peace is the true sign of victory. When you stop chasing closure, forgive sincerely, and trust Allah without explanations, it signals that relief is already written, even if the situation hasn't changed yet. If you want, I can also turn these into YouTube on-screen points, short reels, captions, or Urdu versions. There comes a moment in a long test when a person realizes they are no longer chasing the same things they once chased so desperately. Earlier, the heart was restless, running after explanations, closure, validation, or reassurance. Every unanswered message, every delay, every silence felt heavy. The mind kept replaying the same questions. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? When will I finally feel at peace? This constant chasing was exhausting, not just emotionally, but spiritually. The heart was tied to outcomes, to people, to answers that were never fully in its control. And the more it chased, the more drained it became. Over time, however, something begins to shift. Without a dramatic moment or sudden realization, the heart slowly grows tired of running. Not tired in a hopeless way, but tired in a wise way. It begins to understand that chasing what was never meant to stay only deepens the wound. The person stops checking, stops waiting for apologies that may never come, stops needing validation from places that once mattered too much. This stopping is not bitterness, it is maturity. It is the heart realizing that its peace cannot depend on external responses. When the chasing ends, something unexpected happens. Peace begins to arrive quietly. Not because everything is fixed, but because the heart is no longer pulling itself apart trying to fix everything. Strength replaces desperation. Silence no longer feels threatening. Solitude becomes bearable, even comforting. The person starts to feel whole again, not because life is perfect, but because they are no longer giving their peace away to uncertainty. One of the most powerful signs that a test is nearing its end is forgiveness that comes without being asked. At the beginning of pain, forgiveness feels impossible. The wound is too fresh, the injustice feels too heavy, and the heart demands acknowledgement. But after time, reflection, and turning to Allah, the heart begins to loosen its grip on resentment. Not because the other person suddenly deserves forgiveness, but because carrying anger has become heavier than releasing it. Forgiveness becomes an act of self-preservation and worship, not approval of what happened. This forgiveness is quiet. It does not need announcements or explanations. It happens between the heart and Allah. The person lets go, not to free the one who caused pain, but to free themselves. In doing so, the heart becomes lighter. The burden that once felt permanent begins to fade. And in that moment, the believer realizes that the test no longer has power over them. What once controlled their emotions now barely touches their inner peace. Trust begins to settle deeply into the heart. Not the kind of trust that depends on seeing results, but the kind that rests in knowing that Allah's plan is always kinder than it appears. The believer stops demanding clarity and starts accepting mystery. Questions lose their urgency. The heart learns to say, Allah knows, and truly mean it. This is not weakness or surrender to defeat. It is surrender to wisdom. It is the heart choosing faith over fear. When this level of trust arrives, relief often follows in unexpected ways. Sometimes situations change suddenly. Sometimes new doors open effortlessly. Sometimes old attachments fall away naturally. And sometimes nothing changes outwardly at all. Yet everything feels different inside. The test no longer defines the person. It becomes a chapter, not the whole story. The believer looks back and realizes that what once felt like destruction was actually transformation. This stage of peace is not accidental. Allah does not bring a heart to this level of acceptance without preparing something better ahead. Even if the ease does not arrive immediately, the believer is no longer desperate for it. Contentment replaces anxiety. Hope replaces fear. The heart becomes steady, grounded in reliance on Allah alone. In the end, the greatest victory of any test is not what is gained or lost in the dunya, but what the heart becomes through it. When a person stops chasing what hurts them, forgives without conditions, and trusts Allah without needing explanations, the test has already fulfilled its purpose. And Allah, in His mercy, never prolongs a test once its lesson has been learned. The peace you feel today may be the strongest sign that relief is closer than you think. May Allah ease every hidden pain, accept every silent dira, and grant us relief that brings us closer to Him, not further away. Ameen.